Let's face it, most pitches and presentations suck. But speaking in public doesn't have to be petrifying or difficult. In fact, there's a formula for success. I started my career on stage and screen, but I've spent the last 12 years working with thousands of people all around the world, sharing the tools that actors use to show up with confidence and captivate their audience. I've even written 2 books about it. If you want to be a better speaker than the vast majority of people on the planet, there are just 6 simple steps that you need to follow. Let's get started. Step 1 is discover. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people making is jumping straight into the detail, opening the laptop, going to PowerPoint, starting to create the slides, or getting out a Word document and starting to type in the script. In reality, we need to take a step back before we can start to commit to those sorts of details. So the first step of a great presentation or a great pitch is the discovery phase. We've got to understand, what is the exam question? What is the thing that we are going to be answering for our audience? Then who are the audience? The types of people in front of us will determine the type of message that we create. So are we speaking to people that are particularly analytical? Are they more impulsive? Are they looking for lots of detail, or do they just want the big picture? We've got to really think about who we're speaking to so that we can tailor our message accordingly. The 2 other big things to think about at this stage are the goal. What is it that you're looking to achieve with the presentation or the pitch? What outcome are you looking for? And also the competition. Who are you competing against? In a sales environment, in a pitch, that's going to be really obvious. But in a presentation, for example, what other options do your audience have? Are you simply competing against their social media and the mobile phone? Or is someone else delivering a message that is contrary to the message that you're trying to get across? Once you start to understand that from a big picture perspective, then you can start to take the next steps. So the most important thing in this discover phase is to zoom out. We need to see the big picture before we can move on. Step 2 is distill. You've done all the big picture thinking, and now you need to start to narrow things down. You need to start to decide what stays and what goes. The thing that's going to help you do that is getting clear on your intention. What do you want your audience to know? What do you want your audience to feel? What do you want your audience to do? And why do you want them to do it now? Those 4 questions are really powerful to help you craft and shape your message. Ideally, we want to be able to distill the whole thing down into a single headline. If you think about what you get on the front of a newspaper, it is a summary of everything that is contained within the article itself. But very cleverly, it's been boiled down to 5 to 10 words. And if you can do that for your pitch or presentation, it's going to really help you get clarity around your message, but also make it much easier for your audience to digest that message too. So once you've got that intention, you then want to be thinking about the stardust. What are the interesting things that are going to support that message that you have decided on? Whether that is facts and figures, whether that is visuals, whether that's case studies and stories, whether you're thinking about a metaphor to join everything together. Again, at this stage, we're not putting pen to paper. We're not actually committing to a narrative. We're starting to bring all of the ingredients of our cake together in the right quantities so that we can start to create something that's really delicious for our audience. Nice little metaphor there. Step number 3 is design, and it's where everything starts to get real, where you do start to create that narrative and potentially the visuals that you're going to use to tell your story. In a previous video, I've talked about the 20-70-10 ratio, and that's a really good way of thinking about the overall structure of your speech. The 20% is going to be your opening, setting context, helping people understand what the topic is. And then you're going to spend the vast majority, 70% of your time in the deeper dive, making your core argument. And then that final 10% is going to be your conclusion and wrapping things up. And what you want to think about is the narrative arc that happens throughout the middle of the presentation. What are the 1, 2, 3 key messages or key ideas that you're trying to bring together? And there are loads of other videos on this channel that will take you in detail into how to do that. Once you've got that superstructure together, then you can start to think about the visuals. You can start to think about whether you're actually going to script it or whether you're just going to use a framework. My advice for those of you that have real trouble learning lines, which is the vast majority of people on the planet, is not to commit to doing that, but rather to give yourself the flexibility of a framework. We don't want to have to remember what we have to say next verbatim. We want to be able to guide ourselves through that narrative and know that we're heading in the right direction without being wedded to specific words. So by the end of this stage, the whole presentation has come together and you're now ready to start to bring it to life. Before I give you the final 3 steps, if you want to explore everything that I'm sharing in this video in more detail, then make sure you grab a copy of my new book, Cut Through: The Pitch and Presentation Playbook, where I'll take you through the 6 Ds in detail. You'll find a link somewhere around this video. Step 4 is drill. It always blows my mind how little people actually rehearse. As a professional actor, I spend hours and hours and hours working on the characters, working through the lines, doing the failure in private so that I could succeed in public. So often when I'm working with clients, they really dismiss rehearsal as something that, is not important, that they don't have time for. The reality is that if you don't rehearse enough, it looks rehearsed. So quite often people will say to me, I don't like to rehearse because I look wooden. That just tells me that you haven't rehearsed enough. So if you want to really succeed with your presentations and your pitches, you have to put in the work behind the scenes. I'd encourage you to work backwards from the day of performance. So if you imagine that this is the day that you're going to be delivering on, then when does the dress rehearsal need to be? How many public rehearsals are you going to have where you invite other people and people offer you those difficult questions? How many private rehearsals are you going to have where it's just you going through the lines? When are you going to do the car crash? Most people avoid that first outing, that first opportunity to speak the words aloud because they're worried that people will judge them. But actually, we need to get that first horrible car crash rehearsal out the way so that we can start to improve. It's all about creating a muscle memory. It's not good enough just to do the rehearsal in your head. You've got to actually go through the paces. So if you're going to be standing up, stand up. If you're going to be doing this on Teams or Zoom, set up a Teams or Zoom call so that you can rehearse in it. If you want people to ask you questions, get people in to ask you questions. You want to create match conditions as much as you possibly can. And the final thing you need to think about as part of this drill process is, what is your plan B? If things go wrong, how are you going to get out of jail? Have you got some questions prepared? Do you have a backup laptop? Have you written down some notes? Have you planted someone in the audience that you can ask a question of? Make sure that you don't leave these things to chance. The more prepared you are, the more comfortable you'll be, and the more compelling your message will be when you come to deliver it. Step number 5 is deliver. You've done the hard work. You've done all of the thinking and the rehearsal. Now is the moment to go out there and share your message with the world. And there are a few things you want to be thinking about before you do that. The very first is just to take a deep breath. Inevitably, when the stakes are high in these sorts of interactions, the adrenaline kicks in. We start to feel those nerves creeping through the body. But nerves are just energy, and it's about how you use that energy rather than allowing that energy to use you. So starting with the breath is a brilliant way to start. The other thing I'd really encourage you to do when you do stand up in the meeting room or on the stage, or it's your time to talk and the spotlight on the Zoom call goes to you, is to stop before you start. It doesn't have to be huge, but just taking that moment, slowing things down, gives you so much more gravitas and will draw your audience in. In order to get there, I would suggest that you do a little bit of a warm-up before you start. Athletes warm up, musicians warm up. You'd never consider going to run a marathon, for example, without doing some sort of stretching in advance. And I would suggest that you should never go into an important presentation, pitch or meeting without doing something to raise your energy levels, expand your physical presence, and work with the instrument of the voice a little bit. And there are so many things I could talk about there that I'll have to make some more videos about them. So if you'd like specific tips and tricks on that, then just let me know in the comments. Ultimately, what this is all leading up to is you being able to start with a bang. You want to lead that energy in the room. Your job as the person presenting, as a person speaking, is to take your audience on a journey. You don't need them to be at the same energy level as you are, but you don't want them to be below you. And I would suggest to you, if you imagine a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is like man flu, can't get out of bed. 10 is 2 cans of Red Bull, packet of M&Ms, completely wired. The sweet spot is level 8. That's where you're going to be leading the energy in the room and really taking responsibility for how your audience engages with the message. And the final step 6 in the process, is debrief. It doesn't end the moment you stop talking. We need to think about what we can learn from the whole process so that we can improve as we go. So that starts with a review, what went well, even better if, you taking some time out to reflect on what's happened. But it also means eliciting feedback. Can you ask someone in the audience, and this is really important, ask them in advance to provide you with their thoughts after you have delivered the message. In a formal sales context, then quite often you will get feedback from the customer in sense of them going, yes, we'd like to do it, or no, we don't. But can you go a little bit deeper? What did they like? What didn't they like? Even if you weren't successful, in fact, especially if you weren't successful, there's a great opportunity to learn from that experience. And I'd also encourage you to start to create a presentation bank, right? We don't want to be continually reinventing the wheel. There might be specific slides or specific ideas or stories that work really well that you could recycle and reuse at different moments. So do start to capture those things so that you don't have to start from scratch next time. And also create for yourself a little bit of a learning log so that you can review what happened and give yourself some things to work on for next time. And that's a really brilliant way of allowing you to continually refine your process and improve your performance so that you create maximum impact every single time. Discover, distill, design and drill, deliver and debrief. Follow those 6 steps and you'll transform your content and your performance. Let me know how you get on in the comments. And if you want to dive a little bit deeper, check this out.